Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Our Home Ground, where the women's game feels personal and powerful. I'm so happy to be back with this bonus episode today and talk about the winter transfer window. We're going to focus on the WSL because that's where most of the movement was that I'm comfortable talking about. Some of the other European teams had a little bit of movement, but not a ton. And so I'm not really going to touch on that. So we'll stick to the WSL. If you're hoping that I would be talking about some of the NWSL transfer news and stuff going on over there, that will be a future episode, as I don't think the NWSL transfer window closes until like March. It might even be like 2 weeks into the season. We'll talk about more NWSL stuff as we get closer to the start of that season. But for now, we'll talk about the WSL transfer window today and some of the things that happened. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the moves that each team made, which we will talk a little bit about, I want to first name a couple of the big takeaways that I had. First of all, the women's game, Sam Mewis's vertical under Men in Blazers, reported that this January 2026 transfer window set a new record with clubs spending over $10 million for the first time on international transfer fees and things, which is reported to be up by like 85% from the record that was set in 2025, which I don't know why, but this felt surprising to me. I think part of it is we didn't have any of these like bombshell record-breaking fees this transfer window, but there was a lot of movement. There were a lot of things going on. People still paid big money for players, which I think is really exciting just to see that these clubs, these teams are investing and spending money on the women's teams. I think it's really, really exciting. So this is a great sign. It's a big number. $10 million is a lot. So I'm really, really excited about that. And then the other major takeaway that I had was the clubs seem to be taking loan opportunities for their players really, really seriously. And that feels silly for me to say. I'm sure that they always have. But what I noticed this transfer window was a lot of young players being out on loan and then being recalled and sent somewhere else because they either needed a different challenge or to be with a better team or to be in a team that they fit into better, or they weren't getting enough minutes on their loan at whatever team that they thought that they would get minutes at, so they're being sent somewhere else. And I thought that was really interesting. And it's just not something that I'd ever, I guess, paid that close of attention to. And so as I was like tracking who was going where, it was like, oh, young player called back from loan. And I was like, oh, that's great. And then it was like, and they're out somewhere else, which I think is really cool. I do wonder about the effect that has on like a player's sort of mental health. Joining two new teams in 1 year is really, really hard. Moving cities, moving across the country, potentially moving countries. Some of these players are going on international loans. I think that does a lot, especially to like a young player. It also probably builds a lot of resilience and all of these things. So I think there's like a multitude of ways that we can look at and think about those things. But I just noticed that and I thought it was really, really interesting. So I wanted to bring it up. The other thing that I'm wondering about, if there's any research, or maybe it needs to be this sort of like longevity research, but I'm wondering if that will end up being really good for players' sort of physical health as they move into a professional career. Because when you're in like an academy situation, my understanding is it's not a professional situation. Yeah, you are playing a lot. You're still an elite athlete, like all of these things. But then to go into a first team and get like professional experience is a much more intense situation. And my understanding of some of the major issues that we're having with injuries in women's soccer is this transition is like too fast, and women's bodies just like aren't necessarily prepared because of the sort of lack of investment from an early age. So I'm wondering if these players going to like a WSL2 side or even one of the lower divisions and being in this like first team environment and getting that kind of loading and intensity of games and those sort of things as a step and then moving into like the WSL first teams, if that will help sort of ease that transition on the body and end up being really good for them in the long run. I have no evidence other than it makes sense to me that would be a thing, but it could not be at all. And I could be totally wrong about all of it. And maybe being at the higher level academies and having access to all of the like really high end equipment and physios and all those things is also good in its own right. So I don't know. I'm not sure, but that was just something that I was thinking about. And at least on the surface, seems like that might be a step in a direction to help with the longevity of these players' health and stuff like that. I don't know. If anybody knows anything about that, I would love to talk to you because I think those kinds of things are really interesting. And if you haven't picked up on it, I'm really interested in players' health and keeping players healthy and trying to figure out how we can do those kinds of things. I just find it all really, really interesting. So those are my major sort of broad takeaways. And now, just like we did on my last transfer roundup, we'll go through and talk about what each of the teams did. So we will start with Arsenal. We will go in alphabetical order. This is not favoritism. Obviously, everybody knows Arsenal is my favorite team. And I'm not going to talk about everything because then it just gets into this like long list that you can't even keep track of anyway. So I'll just pull out a couple of highlights. They did send 5 players out on loan, which is great. 4 of them are academy graduates, and one of them is Jenna Neiswanger. I think Jenna going out on loan was shocking to a lot of people. It was shocking to me. I didn't think she'd go on loan. I thought she would just transfer somewhere. I thought she was like gone because she hasn't gotten any minutes at all, any meaningful minutes at least, since she came over last January. So I'm excited for her. She went on loan to Villa. I hope that that goes really well for her. Arsenal did have a really big signing, and that was Smilla Holmberg. She is an outside back she came from Hammarby IF in the Netherlands, I think. And she has been there since sort of early on in the transfer window. So she's already gotten meaningful minutes. She was on the Champions Cup team that won the Champions Cup, all of that. So feels like she's been there a long time. So to be talking about it now when she's been there for like a month feels kind of silly. But that is the case. They also recalled Naomi Williams, one of their goalkeepers, from loan because they do have an injury situation after Manu Zinsberger early in the season tore her ACL. And then out, it came out that all of our goalies were actually injured. Aneka Borba and Daphne Van Dumselaar were both injured, and Daphne just had to play because she was like the less injured of the two. Seems like right now, other than the concussion situation that Aneka has at the moment, they both actually seem to be healthy, which is great. But then they also signed on loan Barbara Vodakova, I think is how you say her name, from a team in Prague for the rest of the season, just I think to have as another backup there. So that's very exciting. So that's kind of what Arsenal did. Next, Aston Villa. Obviously, they got Jenna Neiswanger in from Arsenal. We already talked about that. And then they signed on a permanent transfer Oriane Jean-Francois. She is a French midfielder who was playing for Chelsea. And then they sent a couple of players out on loan, Sarah Mailing out on loan, and then 2 others. And then Katie Robinson signed with Bristol City. She had been out on loan somewhere else, but they recalled her from loan and then she transferred. So that's the business Villa did. They didn't do a ton of business this window. I don't know that they really needed to, but that's what they did. So it'll be interesting to see where they finish up. The next team is Brighton, and they like didn't, they had 2 pieces of movement. They signed, I really don't know how to say this person's name, and I'm very sorry, but I don't speak the language. Olog Fedton, maybe. Sorry, I'm so sorry that I don't know how to say that name. From Valerenga, she's a midfielder. So they signed her. Very exciting for them. And then they sent out Dorlin Carabali to Boston Legacy. So she went to the NWSL. So that's kind of all the business they did there. Nothing crazy. Chelsea, I think to me feels the craziest of what happened because they didn't sign anyone. And looking at their squad, it's like, Bridget, who could they have signed? And you know what? That's a really good question. And I don't have an answer to that. But just after having such big bombshell transfer windows, like 4 in a row, it seems like for them to not bring anyone in was crazy. And Sonia Bonpastor was asked about it, and she seemed a little displeased about it. She didn't seem happy. She was saying that she hopes that something would happen, and then nothing did. They did send Micah Hamano to Tottenham on loan, which I thought was a little bit interesting because she was getting decent minutes with Chelsea. And then they sent a couple other people transferred or on loan, but they weren't like key players for them. So, in sake of time, I'm not going to talk about every single one of them. Everton is our next team. They got a couple of players in. Hannah Blundell is there on loan from United, which I think she's a defender. I think that's great for them. She's a really good player. They got Layla Harbert on loan from Arsenal, midfielder, young. She had been at Portland for the last half of Portland season, the first half of Arsenal season. So there's that. Katie Robinson was at Everton on loan. They sent her back, loan return, and then they sent Kenzie Weir to Ipswich Town on loan, and then Haley Ladd signed with Crystal Palace. So not a ton of movement here. They had a couple of signings, so intrigued to see how all of that works out for Everton. Leicester, I think, had a really good window. I think they did quite well, honestly. So they got Sarah Mailing on loan from Aston Villa, as I previously mentioned. Then they signed Alicia Lehman, who had previously been in the WSL, I think at a couple of different clubs. She was most recently at FC Como. She is now back in the WSL, which I think is really exciting. I think she's an exciting player to watch. She has a huge social media following. She was just recently on Daily Brightness with Rachel Daly and Millie Bright talking about what that social media following has been like. So if you're interested in that, go listen there. I think she provides a representation in women's football that there aren't that many of. She's super femme. She wears like beautiful makeup when she plays. And I just feel like there aren't that many people who are represented in that way. And I think that's really important too. We need all kinds of representation, all kinds of different women. So I think it's really exciting that she's back in the WSL in a league that feels a little bit more accessible than the Italian league. But maybe I'm just not paying enough attention to the Italian league. Maybe it is really accessible. Anyways, they also signed Ashley Neville from Tottenham. She's a defender, which I think is a big pickup for them. And then they signed Rachel Williams, a forward from Manchester United, which there was some like controversy about this on the internet because I guess Rachel Williams like told a fan or something that she was leaving United. And then that fan like shared it on the internet. And so it was like confirmed before she could even confirm it, or either the clubs could confirm it. Anyways, it was a little bit bizarre of a situation. But otherwise, they had a couple of players who had been on loan, who went out on loan. An Arsenal player, Cecily Wellesley Smith, was recalled from loan from them. So there was like a little bit of movement that way, but I think the players they brought in are pretty impressive. So I'm excited to see what happens here for them. Next, we'll talk Liverpool. And I think Liverpool has one of my favorite signings of the window. I'll say that. And that is they signed Denise O'Sullivan, Irish international from the North Carolina Courage in the NWSL. She's a midfielder. She has been at North Carolina, I think, for 10 years. She was captain of that club, the engine, the heartbeat of that club. So her leaving was a really big deal, which again, I'm sure we'll talk about this again on the NWSL episode, but I think she's going to make such a difference for Liverpool. I've been saying I don't understand why Liverpool isn't more successful than they are. They look like a really good team. So we'll see. They also got Martha Thomas from Tottenham on loan. They got a goalie on loan. So they signed a few people, which are interesting and I hope really help bolster their team. And then they sent three people out on loan, including one of their goalkeepers who had been like banned from the WSL for had like a 5 game ban or a 6 game ban for like abusive language in the locker room to a teammate. I don't know enough to super comment on it, but just on the surface, that seems like it's probably best for everyone that she be on loan. And I hope that she's also learning and growing and all of those things. So that's the business that Liverpool did. I think Denise O'Sullivan is one of my favorite signings of the window. Okay, next team to talk about is London City Lionesses. And they had a big signing in signing French forward Delphine Cascarino from the San Diego Waves. She was playing so well with San Diego. She had a great Euros as well with France. So I think that's a huge pickup. She is injured at the moment, so that's less than ideal. She also, it's interesting when you sign someone in the January window from the from the NWSL because they're in preseason, so they likely won't be match fit right away unless they have known or you sign them really early in the window and then they can sort of progress to match fitness a little bit more quickly or whatever. But she has picked up an injury. They also signed Malu Marcetto from Madrid CFF, who is a midfielder. So that's very exciting. Something else that London City did that I'm intrigued about is they sent Katie Zellum on loan to West Ham. I can't figure out what's going on with Katie Zellum. She was captain of Manchester United, getting a lot of minutes, left there to go to Angel City, and essentially got no minutes at Angel City. So she left there to go to London City, hasn't really gotten any minutes at London City, and is now on loan to West Ham. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I hope that this loan spell to West Ham is good for her just in the time that she's been there already. She's played in both of the games that she was available for. So hopeful for her that it goes really well and that she can sort of get back on track. She was like in with the Lionesses and she hasn't been called in a long time. So hopeful for her that all things move forward. Sophia Jakobsen, who was signed from an NWSL side, maybe also the San Diego Wave, they mutually terminated her contract this transfer window. So she is gone as well. They sent a couple of other people out on loan. So interesting to see when Delphine Cascarino is healthy, what she can do to add to their side. I'm excited to see what's going on there because they seem to be in pretty good form. The next team to talk about is Man City, and this is the team that had the worst signing in my opinion because it broke my heart. It was a brilliant signing, and I'm mad about it, and that's okay. And I have already talked about it on the podcast. And that is they signed Sam Coffey from the Portland Thorns. Reportedly, they paid a transfer fee of $875,000 for her. That is not enough. They stole her from us. I am one of Sam Coffey's biggest fans. I think she's incredible. And something about her just makes a lot of sense in the Man City team, which I don't love for me. But she seems to be settling in really well, getting decent amount of minutes. The day that I'm recording this is the day that Arsenal played City and City lost 1-0 to Arsenal. She played the whole second half. They subbed her in at halftime, and I actually thought she looked quite good. She always looks quite good at Sam Coffey. She is so good. Anyways, I could go on and on and on about her, but we don't need to. I just think brilliant signing. She's such a strong defensive midfielder. And she just seems like a lovely, lovely person. I hope that she thrives at Man City, not at Arsenal's expense, which it won't be at this point because I guess maybe there's like the FA Cup or something that we could still play each other in. But, anyways, they also did send two of their players out on loan to Celtic, which I think is really exciting to see some of these like other clubs start to get loan players and to grow those leagues and those teams, which I think is really cool and fun. All right, moving on to Man United, who I actually think had a good window. They signed early, and I won't say they signed early and often because they only signed three players in, but they did sign three players who I think are going to be really impactful for them. I think they actually already have been. First player that they announced was Hannah Lundqvist, who came from San Diego Wave. She reportedly was a free agent, but most recently she had played at San Diego Wave. She's a defender, an outside back. Sorry, that's what we call them here. I've recently learned that people in England don't call them that, but what can you do? She's an outside back. She's already been playing with them a little bit. She's playing great. Very excited for her. The next player they signed was Leah Schuler, who left Bayern Munich after playing there for like 6 years or something. She had been there for a very long time. So that was an emotional move for her. The social media of it all was emotional. Just before Christmas at Bayern's last game, she was like sobbing on the field. It was very clear that she was leaving. Hadn't been announced, obviously, because it was December, not January, but it was quite clear that she was leaving. And so emotional for her. I just saw something on social media where a German person asked her in English, "So, how's your English?" And she answered in German. So I just am always so curious on the like personal side of how you move to a country where you don't really speak the language and what that transition is like and how you do all those things and how you make that choice. And I just think it's so impressive. And one day I would love to just like pick somebody's brain about what that experience was like because it's fascinating to me. Anyways, the other player that they signed was Ellen Vangerheim from Hammarby. She's a forward. That was later on in the window, so I haven't seen as much of her. I don't know if she's even made her debut yet. But I think we've talked about most of the players. They sent Hannah Blundell on loan to Everton. Rachel Williams left. And then some of their younger players went on loan to a few places. They did send someone to Tigres in Mexico on loan, which again, I think that's fun. Also fascinating to move to an entire different country just for like 6 months or something. But hopefully that works out really well for her and she gets some really good experience there. The next team to talk about is Tottenham. So, Tottenham had some movement. They, like I said, signed Micah Hamano on loan from Chelsea, which I think is really big for them. They signed Julie Blockstead from, she was at Hammarby IF most recently, but free agent defender. They got in a couple of other players. They recalled Anna Suzuki from West Ham, recalled her from loan. And then they did have some players go out. Ashley Neville, which she went to Leicester, and that was the tragic situation. I think I did talk about this, where she left and went to Leicester, and then they like played each other the first game of January, and then she accidentally scored an own goal. So she like scored for Tottenham, her old team. Tragic. That's like nightmare situation. Not good. And then they sent Martha Thomas to Liverpool on loan. And Anna Suzuki, though she was called back from West Ham, they sent her to AS Roma on loan, which I just think, as I talked about, I haven't mentioned every single person who's like called in and sent somewhere else because that gets a little bit tedious and confusing because you're not looking at the same spreadsheet that I'm looking at, which is very clear and obvious. But they sent her, so they called her back from West Ham and then they sent her to AS Roma, which I think is interesting, sending to a whole different league in a whole different country, different styles of play. So I think that could be really interesting. And I hope that she speaks Italian. The last team that we're going to talk about is West Ham, and they might have had the most movement out of anyone, which I think is great for them. I hope it goes well for them. West Ham is always like it seems like a really hard team to play, but then they're just not that successful, and it like breaks my heart for them because they feel like so gritty and like they deserve it, and then it just never goes their way. So, but they signed Estelle Cascarino, who is Delphine Cascarino's twin sister. They signed her on loan from Juventus, which is exciting. They got Katie Zellum from London City. They got a couple of other players in, but this is also a transfer that I really, really like that I think will be really good for them. They signed Tuva Hansen from Bayern Munich. Tuva had been at Bayern for like at least 3 years, and she's just such a big personality. She was in so much of their social media at Bayern Munich even though she wasn't really getting a lot of playing time. She is the one, if you guys remember, at the first World Sevens in Lisbon, who she scored and then she like took off her shirt and went and jumped on all of her teammates who were like on the side, not on the field. She like in the crowd, she went and jumped and was celebrating with them. She got a yellow card because she had taken her shirt off, and then she ran past the ref and like blew a kiss at her. So iconic. So iconic. But she is no longer at Bayern Munich. She is now at West Ham and she's a defender. And so I hope that that goes really well for her. They did lose a few players. Amber Tiziak went to Union Berlin. Anna Suzuki is gone. There are a few who they sent out on loan. And then this was on deadline day. This was one of the few deadline day transfers. Anouk Denton, one of their defenders, who has recently started getting a little bit of attention from Serena Wiegmann and the England staff. She's gotten called in when there's been some injury trouble in the defense post Euros. She transferred to BFC for £200,000 transfer fee. So really interesting. I'm excited to see what happens there. I think seeing some of these English players go play in the NWSL has been really, really fascinating. It's worked out really well for some of them. Esme Morgan to be, I think, the best example. So that kind of wraps up the sort of like individual team by team player focus. And there was a lot that happened. I know I didn't talk about every transfer fee and all of that because A, that stuff's really hard to find. But the ones I could find, I did let you guys know about. But there's another couple of things I want to talk about. One of the biggest moves that I want to discuss is not actually WSL focused, and we're going to move a little bit into Europe broader as we think towards the next transfer window, which will be over the summer, because there are so many players who are out of contract at the end of the year. And I think things are going to get shaken up. We're going to see some moving, and I'm not quite sure I'm ready for it. So, one of the big moves that actually got announced this window but won't be happening until the end of the season is Lindsey Heaps, who plays for Lyon and is the captain of the US women's national team, will be joining the Denver Summit at the end of Lyon's season. This was not surprising to me at all. The actually only surprising thing about this to me was that she didn't leave immediately. I really thought she was going to be their first signing and be their sort of like legacy player, which she certainly could still be their legacy player. But she's a Colorado native. I believe this team, she said, plays like 20 minutes from her hometown. Her parents will get to be at every game. Her husband lives in San Diego. He's part of the San Diego men's coaching staff or something like that to some effect. So she'll be significantly closer to him instead of like all the way in France. And so that's none of this is surprising to me. I think it is really exciting to have the US women's national team captain back in the NWSL. I'm intrigued to see how it goes because I think it'll be quite different than playing in the French league. And so we'll see how all of that goes, especially as we build up into the World Cup in Brazil in 2027, because that's what players are starting to look at. You want to be in your best form. You want to be like ready to go get selected. Not that Lindsey Heaps is worried about her selection, I don't think, but other players, as we talk about them moving around and all of those things. So let's get into some of these players who are out of contract at the end of the season and have been speculated a lot about. A lot of these players have. There are certainly far too many for me to name all of them and go through every single one. So I apologize in advance if I don't talk about the player that you wanted me to talk about. But I want to talk about some of the ones who are like super, what I view as like integral to their club and would be a big shakeup if they left. My understanding is since the opening of the winter transfer window, any of these players who are out of contract at the end of the season are free to start negotiating with other clubs, potentially even signing pre-contracts. So, obviously, I'm not like anyone who actually does the like rules of these things, but that's my understanding. So, we'll start with some Arsenal players because they have a lot. Arsenal have a lot, Chelsea have a lot, Barcelona have a lot, and then we'll touch on Bayern Munich a little bit. So, Beth Mead, her contract is up at the end of the year. She was linked to London City over the summer, and it was reported in January that Arsenal had accepted an offer for Beth from London City in the summer, but Beth herself refused it and wanted to stay. Since then, and I don't think that Arsenal necessarily saw this as being the case, she has been a regular starter for them just based on injury. Chloe Kelly's been injured. They have not had a lot of choice for wingers. And so Beth has been playing an incredible amount of minutes. And she has turned back into this vital player for Arsenal, has some of the best stats on the team. I think has one of the highest like goal involvement on the team, if not the highest. And she has just made herself indispensable, I feel like. So if they did not renew her contract, I would be shocked. I just can't see why they wouldn't. But I feel that way about somebody else that we'll talk about in a minute. And so I don't know. I haven't heard them linked to signing other wingers, and so it's not like she's losing her spot to somebody else. She actually said somebody asked her post game, like, there's been a lot of speculation about what's going to happen with your contract and, all these things. So, like, how are you feeling? What do you think? You're playing so well. And she essentially was like, having competition just makes me better because I have to prove that I'm better and I'm worth it. And then she kind of didn't exactly say it, but it was very much like, and it's clearly working because like look at what I'm doing. She didn't say that. I'm saying that for her because she's been incredible this season. Another player that is out of contract is Emily Fox, but all the reports say that she is in talks with Arsenal to renew her contract. And that they are positive. All things are pointing to her signing a new contract. Both parties are interested in a contract renewal. And in fact, she recently did like a piece of media or an interview or something that involved a word association game. And when Arsenal was said, she first was like club. And then she goes, family, which was just so cute. Like she seems to be really happy there and really settled in, which is great. She has said in interviews it took her a little while. She got there in January and then it was like crazy. Then she went to the Olympics, crazy. And then it was sort of like after that that she finally, when she first did like the full preseason with the team and settled in. So I would love it if she renewed. It seems like she wants to renew. Seems like everybody wants her to renew. The next player who is out of contract, which is devastating to me, is Katie McCabe. And it has been reported that Arsenal is not planning to offer her a new contract and that the club is moving in a different direction. There have been reports of several other WSL clubs and several NWSL clubs. I actually think even some European club being interested in signing her. This move will gut me. She just feels so integral to Arsenal. She plays so hard for the badge. She is so passionate, sometimes to her own detriment, but she gives everything every time and she loves the fans and she has been like engaging with the fans so much. And it feels like she knows this is the end too. I mean, obviously she knows way more than any of us know, but it you can just feel there's almost a sense of like nostalgia I almost get from her when she's like celebrating with the fans. I was there after the Chelsea game when she celebrated with fans and she like wiped a tear or two. She wasn't like sobbing, but she wiped a tear or two when we were singing her chant. Like it's going to be hard when she goes. I don't know that it's necessarily the wrong thing for her or the club, but it's just going to be really hard. She's been there for 10 years and Arsenal without Katie McCabe seems crazy, but this is football and that's what happens. Kim Little is also out of contract at the end of the season. She is the captain of Arsenal and she's 35, but my God, is she in exceptional form right now? She is playing so well, and it looks pretty clear to me that Arsenal does not have a solid succession plan at the moment for her. They don't really have someone who's ready to come in and take over for her. I do think they're looking for that. I think they're very much looking to sign a few midfielders over the summer, but I think they have to renew her. I think if she's willing, they should ask her to stay at least for another year. And I think that she'll want to. She's playing so well. And she seems this season to have been able to stay a little bit healthier. She's missed some games here or there, touch wood. I don't mean to like jinx her or anything, but she, I think the past couple of seasons she had struggled with some injuries. So I was a little worried that she might just say, like, yeah, I'm good. But it seems like this season she's been playing a lot of minutes, playing great. She had incredible game against City this morning. So I love her and I want her to stay forever, 10 more years. Sina Blackstenius, the Champions League final goal scorer, if anyone forgot, is also out of contract at the end of the season. And I think there are a couple of other ones who theoretically might be out of contract. It's a little bit uncertain. I've seen some things reporting that like Steph Catley and Kyra Cooney Cross are as well. I know why Kyra's not being reported on because they extended a 1 year for her, and they did the same thing for Mariana Caldente. But Steph wasn't involved in this list, so I don't know when her contract is up. But I thought all three Aussie players were up at the end of the year, so that would be Caitlin Ford as well. I don't know. When I was just now looking at like who it is, nothing was saying those people. So we'll see what happens there with all of those things. There are other league players who are out of contract who I think are also as integral to their teams. I obviously know a little bit more about Arsenal. I follow them a little more closely than everybody else, but Ella Toone at Manchester United is out of contract at the end of the year. I hope for their own sake that United has learned from their own mistakes and will they have an option to exercise a 1 year extension, which they should do whether or not they want to keep her because then they can at least get money if she transfers, like someone will have to pay for her or she stays, which is a great option for them as well. She has a hip injury right now and is out. So that's kind of hard, but she has been getting so many minutes before she was injured. She is integral to this team. She is Manchester United through and through. She's a Tildesley girl. She loves Manchester. So her not at United just sounds crazy to me. Lucy Bronze at Chelsea is also out of contract at the end of the season. Interestingly, she has never renewed a contract with the club. So she did do two stints at Man City, but she went to Lyon in between. So she never just like renewed. She has never renewed at a club. So if she did at Chelsea, this would be her first time. So that's really interesting. She is also out with injury right now. She's having more pain in the shin of the leg that she broke before the Euros. So they're working on that. There are multiple other Chelsea players that I'll run through that are out of contract. Hannah Hampton, cannot imagine them not re-signing her. Millie Bright, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. She recently retired from international football, but I don't know how long she'll want to continue playing. So I think she'll probably, I would be surprised if she retired and didn't resign, but who knows? Aggie Beaver Jones, I cannot imagine them not wanting to resign her. She's a bright young striker. I think she has so much potential there. So I can't imagine them not wanting to resign her. Sam Kerr is out of contract. And I guess apparently Sam Mewis made a comment about needing to go to Perth more regularly to visit. So there's like people are speculating that maybe she's going back to play in Australia. I would be surprised about that just based on where the A League is right now. They're not even like fully professional. So I cannot imagine Sam Kerr going there. But, and I think Sonia Bonpastor just said in an interview, like she was out for a year and a half with her ACL injury. We need to give her time to get back in form, to get back to the Sam Kerr that we all know. So I can't imagine them not wanting to re-sign her. So we'll see what happens there. Guru Wrighton is also out of contract. I don't know what she'll do. She just had a baby. She and her wife just had a baby. I think wife, maybe girlfriend, whatever, partner just had a baby. So I could see her wanting to be closer. She's from Norway, so I could see them wanting to be, closer to family or something. So I don't know what's gonna happen there. And then finally from Chelsea, Kat Macario is out of contract at the end of the season. And it has been reported that they offered her a new contract and she rejected it and is not planning to stay. There have been a lot of reports that she's going to come back to the NWSL. She's a brilliant player. Anybody would be so excited to have her. So I'm intrigued to see what happens there and where she ends up. Bunny Shaw of Man City is out of contract come June. And I just have to imagine that they will do absolutely everything that they can to resign her, considering the form that she's currently in, the form that the team is currently in, that is directly related to the form she's in. She is so integral to all the things that they do in the way that they play. And so hopefully they're able to resign her. I can't imagine her anywhere else. I saw that like it was either Ellen White or Farrah Williams said that she needed to like go. And I thought that was a crazy thing to say. She seems to love it there, and the way that she and Viv Miedema and Caroline Nicoli and Lauren Hemp are all kind of that front four is working together is just unreal, unless you're playing Arsenal. Anyways, a few other players that I want to talk about. So, Georgia Stanway of Bayern Munich has announced that this will be her last season at Bayern Munich. She is not renewing because her contract is up, and she has been very closely linked to Arsenal. And many reports say that she and Arsenal are basically finishing up the final details of a contract. I don't think they got a pre-contract signed in the transfer window. At least it wasn't reported that they did. I don't know if anybody ever reports that they sign a pre-contract because I don't even know what that means. I've never heard of it until now. So it's either new or they just don't announce it. My thought is they probably just don't announce it. But Georgia Stanway going to Arsenal is my dream signing. That is my dream signing. I would love it. Moving on to Barcelona, this is really a fascinating thing. Alexia Putellas, obviously captain of Barcelona, is out of contract in June, and she is arguably one of the best players in the world. And she and her teammates were asked incessantly at basically every single press conference during the transfer window about Alexia's contract. And originally they like weren't saying that much about it, but then towards the end of the transfer window, they were saying things like, one day Alexia won't be at Barcelona and we have to get prepared for that day. I do think that they were sort of talking about this like legacy impact of her. She just turned 32, so certainly she can't play football forever, but she's in exceptional form. Any team would be so lucky to have her. The problem for Barcelona is that she is one of the best players in the world, and that makes her very expensive. Not that they have to pay a transfer fee, but they just don't have any money. I don't know exactly how they've gotten themselves in such a tragic financial situation, but they can't afford to pay their own players. it has something to do with the men's side and the rules and the Liga F and I think all this stuff. I don't really know, but Alexia loves Barcelona, but also she can't stay if they can't pay her. I don't know. I don't know what she's going to do. This is something that I'm watching really closely because I would be shocked if she left Barcelona. That would be crazy. But who knows? It's football, it's work, anything could happen. So we'll see. Barcelona have several other players that are potentially on the move, including Mapi Leon, Salma Periuelo, and Caroline Graham Hansen. So I'm watching those closely because those are all some of the best players in the world at their respective positions. And so can Barcelona afford to keep them? And also, Barca doesn't trade any of their players when they're actually worth money. And so it's like, they're not getting any money, but I think it has so much more to do with the men's side than the women's side, so I don't entirely know. And the final person we're going to talk about is a Barcelona player who has been linked to a move, and that is Anna Battier. So she was at Manchester United and then she went to Barcelona and she talked so much about how it was her dream to play at Barcelona and how she wanted to get back there and all this. She's been there for, I guess this will be like the end of her contract, of her 3-year contract, I think. And now there were strong rumors at the end of the transfer window that she is going to Arsenal, which this was sort of like the nail in the coffin for all of us as Arsenal fans to understand that Katie McCabe is gone. I mean, she's there, but like she will be moving on. So she would be a direct replacement for Katie McCabe. Anna usually plays on the right, Katie plays on the left, but like Anna can also play on the left. She played on the left when Lucy Bronze was at Barcelona, so she's certainly spent some time there. But there's been a lot of drama from like the Barca fans with rumors of her leaving because they're like, I can't believe after she made such a big deal about saying this was her dream club, then she's just gonna leave. And it's like, you guys can't afford to keep her. She is one of the best outside backs in the world. You can't afford to pay your players, so they all have to leave. Like, I don't know what else you want me to say. Like, Anna is not getting these like $1 million Nike deals in the same way that Alexia is. So if Alexia didn't get such a big, maybe she could take like a pay cut or whatever. Like Anna can't do that in the same way. She's not on that kind of level. So I'm watching that one closely too because if she came to Arsenal, that would be so exciting for me. But anyways, I have rambled long enough. This episode is probably so long. I always forget to pay attention to how long this is, but here we are. And that kind of rounds up all the things that I want to talk about. So, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. I hope that this was interesting. I never really know how to do these without just like rambling off a list that isn't interesting. So, let me know if you have questions about any of these specific players or what it means. If anybody has any insight about like what it's like to move cultures to go play, let me know because I'm so intrigued about that idea. Anyways, thank you for being here. If you haven't already liked, subscribed, commented, I would love it if you would. Yeah, and I will see you on Wednesday, hopefully, for another episode. I do have a crazy work week, but I should be able to get an episode out by Wednesday. So thanks for listening to the bonus episode, and I will see you guys soon.